Hey everyone, rant here, back with another Eternal Return video. Today's video topic is going to be pretty relevant if you're a new player or even a veteran player with thousands of hours, just because I've seen a lot of people struggle with the sword concept, and that's going to be inventory management. So for new players out there, I'll be beginning with the early game management of inventory, just because it'll be helpful for you guys if you're not really familiar with how early game routes work. And then for all of you older players who are wondering why I'm calling you out suddenly, I'll explain it later on. Obviously it doesn't apply to everybody, but I think there are players that need to know what they're kind of doing inefficiently, because it does affect them a lot in many of their games, if not every. So to go ahead and start with the early game part, the two most important concepts you need to know for early game inventory management is going to be understanding where your leather sources are and understanding where your flower sources are. So leather is very important in the game. There are very few builds that require no leather whatsoever. And even if you don't require any leather in your build, it's still very convenient to kill chickens as you route along, just because they're so squishy, and it's a very cheap form of experience and credits very early on into the game. So if you're using a character build that requires like leather for your weapon, leather for your chest piece, for example commander's armor, which is very inconvenient on your inventory before you get that first leather, you're going to really want to know where these chickens are and also route to them as quickly as possible and conveniently as possible, and learn that as soon as possible, because the later you get your leather for a lot of these items, the more expanded your inventory will be, and the more annoying it'll be to route, because sometimes your build like really balloons at a certain point in the game or at a certain point in the route, and if you don't have that leather to really make up for it, you might find yourself having to make the judgment call: do I drink my water even though I'm an SP hungry character, and then deal with the consequence of that action later. So really understand where your leather sources are. First, I recommend chickens, then I recommend bats, and then I recommend wolves on your leather zones, just so that you understand like that priority for how to get leather. If your chickens are gone, hopefully the bats there. If the bats and chickens are gone, then hopefully the wolves are there. Wolves being the like absolute bare minimum. I guess you can also go look for boars, but boars are super tanky. And wolves are decent, or wild dogs are decent too, but they do a lot of damage early game, so I'd be careful of them if you're in very populated zones. So the other really important item early game is going to be flowers, mostly because you can only get flowers in very specific zones. So let's say that you're starting in forest, and then you go to like chapel and you TP over to avenue. Let's say that you forget your flower in forest. You're gonna have to double back to a zone with flowers like pond or stream, or you're gonna have to go and head and ship it in if you're really short on time. And that can be really annoying, just because obviously shipping in 30 credits or having to double back is a big waste of time. So you should really remember that if you have a flower item, like let's say Mount Slicer I think is a flower item, you really need to remember to grab it, because if you don't, you'll be setting yourself super far behind for free. And besides all that, you should really understand how to build food when and where. Obviously Dr. Nadja recommends that you go to a campfire to make food, which is a pretty nice boon that 1.0 has given us. If you're really like going heavy on your inventory and you find yourself having to eat your bread and having to drink your water, then you can always make steak from the campfire, and that's gonna be a pretty important item that veteran players might also be a bit too in love with later on, that I'll talk about. So yeah, again, just a summary for new players out there: you're going to want to understand where your leathers are, where your flowers are, and try and find a campfire spot that's convenient for you so that you can cook your food nice and early. And if you are building like an SP heavy character, like let's say you're playing Emma or Shoichi, you will want to understand where to build your drinks, which will probably just be you combining your water with something convenient like ice or honey or whiskey. So don't worry about that too much, just know that you have to make drinks, you should know where to make the drinks. So moving on to the second part of the video, where I have a lot of criticism for a lot of players that really enjoy holding a lot of food. So Nimble Neuron made a change, or more like a revert to food a while back, where instead of ticking for 18 seconds, they now tick for 15 seconds, which is about how long that buff was in the past. So the reason why that's important is because you have to understand how long you have to eat your food to really get rid of all of it. So for example, let's take steak. Steak stacks up to 4, so each steak stack you have is a minute of eating. If you have 4 steak stacks, that means you have 4 full minutes of eating. That's essentially 20% of the game just with steaks. And I say that because a lot of players enjoy having multiple stacks of food in their inventory when most fights realistically last 1 minute at most, not including resting obviously to regen your HP as well. So that's really important because if you're ever playing the game and you're like holding on, you find yourself holding on to like 3 or more stacks of food, I would argue that you're holding too much food because it's very, very easy to replenish your inventory with stakes if you really need that emergency food. Not even talking about your teammates potentially holding a stack or 2 of food. Like, just imagine how many times you play the game and you like kill somebody with like 3 stacks of breakfast sandwiches. Not only have they multiplied the amount of breakfast sandwich in the world, they also like would not have ever eaten all those realistically before finding better food or before, you know, being knocked out of the game. So I would personally recommend only having 2 stacks of food if you can help it. One, like a very good stack, so like the golden foods like salmon or potatoes, or maybe even shokai food or fish and chips, and then having a stack of burner food that you can chomp through, so that would be your steaks, that'd be like things like hot chocolate or anything that you find through those boxes. These are foods that I would recommend you eat while you're killing animals, just because animals in this era hurt a lot if you're not playing very specific characters. So you can obviously have up to like 4 stacks of food if they're very, very high quality food, but just remember that you're not going to eat 4 stacks of food realistically without getting new food. Like, it's very rare that you have 4 straight minutes of fighting and you never kill or down a person with more food, or you don't find animals and happen to be next to a campfire where you get more food. So the reason why I bring that up is because there's so many scenarios where, let's say you're killing alpha or you're trying to open a box and get out as soon as possible, and then because you have so much food in your inventory, you can't pick up that item and you get pushed off that objective and you can't loot anymore and you lose that objective item, which is a huge issue. That happens way more often than you would realize. What that also affects is your ability to hold transition pieces or the materials for transition pieces, and that's another issue because having the ability to make your transition item very easily is a lot more important than just having a stack of food there that you might never eat or even just replace. So obviously this game has been focused a lot more on transition items, which is why I think it's even more important to have the ability to be able to stack those like green items more efficiently. And the more food you have, the less easily you're going to be holding those. Not even to mention slots for cameras or EMPs or even traps that you might want to build. There are a lot of zones that are very good for trap building, but also balloon your inventory to like unreasonable amounts. For example, I think it's like stream. You get almost every item you need for double guillotines except for piano wire, but having to hold the bamboo traps and hammers can really mess up your inventory. And you know, it's probably arguable that having an extra hammer for the 3rd set of DGs is more important than holding stakes there, because that 2nd set of DGs can be given to teammates, and those set of DGs could be the difference between you getting a catch on somebody diving your backline or you losing because you didn't have that extra trap set up to help protect you. And if you're really arguing like value of those items, I think you'd much rather have that set of DGs than like a stack of steaks that you're never going to use. And I can even go as far to apply as to like another stack of Hawaiian pizzas you have, because there's a lot of games where Hawaiian pizzas get really out of hand because one team dies with it, and then the next team that looted that other team dies with it, and then so on and so forth, and suddenly everyone has like 15 stacks of Hawaiian pizza. But realistically, you only need 1 stack of that food because of how efficient it is. This is just something I really want to talk about because it affects so much gameplay. Like, you cannot believe how often I hear people talk about, oh, I couldn't loot that in time because my inventory is full, or they need to spend 30 credits to call in something they could have easily looted, but they didn't loot because, again, they had like 2 steaks, maybe like a seared salmon, maybe like some random box food sitting in the inventory, or maybe they have like 2 sets of SP drinks that they didn't really need because realistically they only need 1 set of SP drinks because their character is really efficient on SP, stuff like that. But yeah, shorter video this time. I hope the ramble made sense. It's just something that I think every player should know about, and hopefully it was helpful. I hope everyone watching has a great day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.